So I'll read a few pages of my novel, um, The Dance of St. Stephen. This is chapter 22, San Esteban, Caribbean Sea, Earth. Neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard, you shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. Leviticus 19:10. Love is all you need. John Lennon. San Esteban has kind of an unusual history. A tiny island, a third the size of Nevis, it was uninhabited when Diego Maria del Vega dropped the Pinta's anchor there in 1493. It had a seemingly endless supply of sweet water that bubbled up from some mysterious source just feet below the surface, and a beneficent combination of wind and current swept coconuts to its sandy beaches and black volcanic soil from everywhere in the Antilles. These took root and towering palms flourished. Wandering birds paused to rest there a while and blessed the place with their droppings, which were laden with every kind of tropical seed. The surrounding seas teemed with edible fare, and the Spanish sailors scooped up clams and mussels by the bushel from the rocky tidal pools on its eastern coast. Capitan del Vega floated a crate of healthy Spanish pigs ashore and released them, and they were fruitful too and thrived. He marked his charts, naming this blessed island for his patron saint, and planned to return on future voyages. And he compelled his men to kneel in the sand and swear an oath upon the cross of his sword hilt to breathe not a word of this place to their humorless Italian commander. But the Pinta never returned. Del Vega died of syphilis in a Santo Domingo dungeon, and San Esteban remained but an ink spot on a rolled-up map in storage in Malaga. 10 years on, the island was rediscovered and put to good use as the Spanish penal colony of choice. The convicts put ashore here, men, women, and children, were found guilty of one or more of these crimes: lewd behavior, public drunkenness, default of gambling debt, loitering too near the palace with empty pockets, whoring, adultery, dueling on the public thoroughfares, being born a bastard, insistence on remaining Jewish. None of them were deemed worthy of the scaffold and noose, or even of the rack. The convicts, left to fend for themselves, built homes of palm and bamboo and went down to the beach to fish. The forests of San Esteban were alive with plump piglets. The temperature hovered around 75 degrees all the year round, and lewd behavior became a viable option once more. The prisoners were fruitful and multiplied, and no one ever challenged anyone else to a duel. Every couple of years a ship would put in with a fresh cargo of convicts and a few elderly jailers, pensioned soldiers, meant to replace the ones from the previous voyage, who invariably were found to have died of natural causes and been neatly buried under bamboo crosses in the little graveyard in the island's central valley. The vessel would take on a supply of fresh water and copra and set its sails for Spain. 400 years later, toward the end of 1898, an American warship anchored offshore and dispatched a whaleboat with 16 Marines to the beach to determine if San Esteban was indeed a Spanish island. In command was a handsome young captain named Flanagan. And, for reasons known only to God, in this landing party was a Navy chaplain, a rabbi, one lieutenant junior grade, Herschel Gruenfeld. Likely he had volunteered to go along because he had very little to do on the ship, and was as bored there as he had been in the pulpit of his basement synagogue back home. The tiny contingent of Spanish sailors that occupied the island spied the American ship and its approaching boat from their hilltop garrison and fled to their motor cutter on the windward side and put out for Puerto Rico. Entirely forgotten on San Esteban, no one had told them the war was lost in less than 4 months, and San Juan was now, along with Guam and the Philippines, part of the new America. Commodore Dewey of Manila Bay, Teddy Roosevelt, and Randolph Hearst said so. Captain Flanagan soon found there was no one in charge on Esteban, though the children who frolicked and squealed about his legs seemed as well-fed and carefree as the piglets that were everywhere. He learned that the native people were aware of the miserable Spanish encampment in the hills, but only saw the sailors when they came down to buy drinking water and food from them. The Spaniards were filthy and bearded, and the pretty Spanish coins the islanders received in payment were all fashioned into jewelry or used as tokens in their games of chance. Sean Flanagan was brawny and big-shouldered, with green eyes and a crest of red hair. He was born in Laredo, Texas, and when he became big enough, rode out on the Mexican border with his father, who was deputy sheriff of Webb County. His mother's father had been a common soldier in the Confederate Army, and Sean's brother was off in South Africa fighting on the Boer side because he had no love for the English. Next time I hope to read a few more pages. Thanks.